Think about the last e-learning course you viewed or experienced. Chances are there was text guiding you every step of the way, instructions telling you what to click on. That approach can work, but it's not the only way. What if there was a way to design learning that felt more immersive and cinematic, like becoming part of the story rather than reading through one? So how do you tell a story without constantly stepping in to explain everything? That tension is what this video explores. And if you watch to the end, I'll show you my 3 favorite ways to hide text in the story without making it feel like text at all. Hi, I'm Travis. I transitioned from classroom language teaching into instructional design. I finished my flagship project and I'm in the final stretch of the Peck Academy certification program. In this project, using tools like Vyond and Articulate Storyline, I set out to design a scenario-based e-learning experience that felt cinematic with as little instructional text as possible. Storytelling has always been at the center of how I teach. So while text-heavy e-learning tends to tell students what to do, story-driven design invites them to experience it. So let's dive into how that shift can take shape in a real project. So instead of explaining the context of your scenario with text, design a scene that communicates the context through things like behavior, environment, and emotional tone. A traditional version might start with a text box that explains the context, things like the learner's role and what's at stake. For example, you're a team leader at a marketing agency. You have a team meeting in 24 hours, but your team is disengaged. Instead, I let the scene communicate that. When I was a Spanish teacher, I co-created stories live with my students in class instead of using the textbook. I would often pause in the moment in a scene and ask a bunch of questions to help my students visualize it, to build the narrative tension, and to feel what was happening. I would ask simple, comprehensible questions like, is the character alone? Who is with him? Does he have anything? Is he nervous? What does he see? Is it light or dark in the room? Questions like those helped immerse us into the story we were creating together. So in a sense, I'm doing the same thing here. Let's take a look at the beginning of my project to see how I did this.
We've got a couple weeks left. But if I can get everyone talking, we might just pull this off.
Without any text, how did I communicate the context to the learner? If you'd like, take a moment, pause the video, and think it through before continuing. By creating a scene with a doorway leading to an awaiting team, the pause before entering, the heartbeat and the deep breath, the team's body position and body language, and the silence, without a single line of explanation, the learner understands the tension. So the moment you remove a text box, something interesting happens. You're forced to design everything else much more intentionally. Next, let's explore some design decisions that do a lot of heavy lifting in carrying meaning. First, let's look at a scene together.
Thanks, Alicia. Let's share out other ideas.
Have an idea. Maya, that'll never work.
This is awful. I'm hearing from the same people and new voices are getting shut down. We barely have any ideas, much less the fresh, unique ones Nimbus is looking for this time. At this rate, there's no way this contract will go through.
So notice the silence after the leader prompts the team. The subtle background music, the ticking clock sound, the facial expressions of the characters, and the framing, the pans and the zooms. Nothing is explained, but it communicates the anxiety, the tension, and the disengagement more effectively than a sentence could. Imagine if I had used a text box that said, the team is upset and tension is high. It's clear and it communicates, but showing it through visuals and the scene that was created invites the learner to really feel it. Brain science actually shows that when emotion is connected to an experience, it becomes much more memorable, stickier. It activates systems in us related to attention, to decision-making, and memory. So let's break down some of these design elements that carry meaning. And I'll actually add a couple more as well. We'll talk about silence and pauses, body language and facial expression, sound, framing, like panning when the camera moves from horizontally on the screen or zooms in or zooms out on something on the screen, and quick cuts. So the first design element that carries meaning is silence and pauses. These have a really powerful ability to create tension, and it almost kind of signals to the learner or to the viewer something important is happening here. Pay attention. The next one is body language and facial expression. Probably one of my favorites. Eyes, faces, bodies all communicate emotional states pretty much instantly. And we know this from lived experience. We can see somebody just very quickly, their eyes and their face, and we know we get a ton of data that a sentence just couldn't contain. So a body position of a character, if we think about some of the scenes from my project that we've looked at, for example, a character slouched to the side, the face withdrawn, tapping a pen, all that transmits way more powerfully than a sentence could. Sound. Audio cues give shape to what's going on inside of us, our internal experience. So we heard some things like the ticking clock, the heartbeat or footsteps. All these things, when they're subtle and kind of in the background, can really send a powerful message. Background music, like you heard in my project as well, can frame the overall tone and emotion of the scene. Framing with pans and zooms direct attention. A slow zoom, for example, can amplify pressure. I use that a lot in my project or focus on a reaction. And they connect one event to a person who it affects. So in the scene we just saw, actually, the narrator says something like, I'm not hearing voices, newer voices are not being heard. And right as he's saying that, it zooms in to one of the characters, suggesting to the viewer, hey, what he just said, this is who we're talking about. Pans can also communicate distance or separation. And finally, quick cuts. Quick cuts are basically fast transitions from one scene to another, and they create this sense of urgency and energy in the viewer. It's used a lot in things like movie trailers and commercials, and instructional designers, we can capitalize on that as well in our learning experiences. They do a really good job at mimicking things like stress and overwhelm and escalation, helping reach that goal of having the learner feel the stakes and feel it rather than just be told that's what's going on. Now, they don't always have to just be for like negative situations like tension and overwhelm, but also for positive things. So on a positive consequence or like the correct answer in a scenario-based e-learning, using quick cuts can compound or increase the positive momentum of that decision that was made. And the added benefit is that they compress time. If you use quick cuts, you can move the story along quickly. Vyond is what I use to create my video animations with the design elements we just talked about. It has templates and characters that you can easily edit and manipulate in so many different ways. If you'd like to learn more about how to create with Vyond, check out the links below. So if nonverbal elements like these can transmit meaning so powerfully, does that mean we can eliminate text entirely? Let's take a look. Now, completely removing text isn't realistic, and it's not always what's best for the learner. You never want to reduce or eliminate text just for the sake of eliminating text. Remember, the goal isn't to create an immersive or cinematic experience and eliminate as much text as you can in and of itself. The goal is to create an experience that sets the learner up for optimal learning, for optimal behavior change. So instead of putting text on top of the story, I looked for ways to hide it in the story. So I'm curious, did you see any ways where text was used in my project, but didn't feel instructional or explanatory? So here are my 3 favorite ways to hide text in the story. First is environmental text. And what I mean by environmental text are things that would naturally be found in the story world that you're creating. These are things like Post-its, signs, or posters that might be in the background. Any kind of background detail that you can use is prime real estate to add some context or add some information instead of using a text box. The next one, number 2, is in-story communication. In-story communication refers to things that could reasonably be written from one character to another, let's say. And there's a variety of formats that this could be. One could be text, messages, emails, handwritten notes even, and I've used a number of these in my project. And finally, the third way to hide text in the story is through character expression. So speech bubbles or thought bubbles. And we're familiar with these. They just simply are used to communicate what a character is saying. And in my opinion, almost a little bit more important is what are they thinking? Because this can really help the learner, the viewer, experience and understand what is going on in the internal world of characters that's not always able to be captured fully through some of the other design elements that we talked about. The principle here isn't that text is the enemy. It's text that breaks immersion. You want text you use to feel like it belongs there. None of this is about removing text for the sake of it. It's about creating learning experiences that the learner can step into rather than read through. So if you're ready to experiment with cinematic, story-driven design, here's the shift. Let the scene do the context work. Let the design elements carry the meaning. And when you use text, let it belong in the story you're creating. When you make these shifts, learning starts to feel less like instruction and more like an experience, leading to more impactful learning. If you'd like to explore the full project and see how all this works together, I've linked it below in the description. I'd love for you to experience it for yourself. My flagship project was built within Peck Academy with feedback from my ID mentor, which helped tremendously with the fine-tuning. If you're curious about Peck Academy and want to learn more, consider joining the tour on Thursday, 10 a.m. Pacific time. We'll link the sign up below in the description. Thanks for watching.